بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So in our last session the author had begun speaking about the way to attain perfection for those people who have reached a high status. So he mentioned a number of things that they did, which one of them was that always remaining pure, which is that always to remain on wudu, and even doing wudu before you go to sleep, so that you sleep on purity, because in Islam purity is half of faith, and staying in purity means that that's a state that is a purer state. It's a state closer to Allah because Allah is pure as well. Number two was not revealing one's private parts, even when one is alone, as far as possible, just out of shyness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels. Number three was revering one's elders, respecting, honoring one's elders, anybody who's older in general, and having mercy and compassion upon the young, upon widows, upon the needy, and anybody else who is vulnerable like that. In fact, all creation, he said. Number four, he says, Al-adabu ma'a ahli al-ilm, خصوصا خدمة الشريعة ومشايخ الطريق فإنهم ورثة الأنبياء. Now we discussed this one as well, which is to have adab with the people of knowledge, especially those who are serving the deen and the sharia in some way, and the mashayikh of the tariq. Anybody who's in a good way teaching people about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the sharia, about the deen, then all of this needs to be respected. فَإِنَّهُمْ وَرَثَةُ الْأَنْبِيَاء, because they are the inheritors of the prophets. Number five is أن لا يزور أحدا من الصالحين ما دام تحت التربية قبل الكمال. This one is a bit more of a delicate one. خوفا من أن يرى كرامة أو خلقا في أحدهم لم يره في شيخه فيعتقد في شيخه النقص فيحرم مدده. What this is talking about is that not everybody is perfect, and if you have a shaykh and he can't be 100% perfect, he's going to have some weaknesses, he's going to have other strengths. Everybody's different. That's your shaykh though. Now another shaykh comes in town, so you go and you sit there as well. So what you're going to notice is that shaykh may have some other strengths. So you'll think, oh, my shaykh, he's stronger than my shaykh in this particular aspect. He's a better speaker maybe. He looks more charismatic. He seems to do this better or that better. So what that's going to do is that's going to create deficiency in your mind about your own shaykh. And the thing is that when that happens, with a lot of people, they then hop between shaykhs, because eventually what's going to happen is that there's going to be somebody else who's even better than that one in some aspect. Remember, everybody has good and bad, everybody has weaknesses, everybody has their strengths. So sometimes we may be in a certain mood and we may notice certain strength and think, there you go, that's what I really need. So generally what the ulama say is that as long as your shaykh is a decent person and you stick to him, Allah will give you the blessing of that. If you're just going to look for somebody who's charismatic or somebody who seems to have a greater following, there could be many reasons for a greater following. Greater following doesn't mean acceptance in the sight of Allah always. In some cases it does, but not always. Because some people are just more charismatic than others. They do things that attract people, but there's no substance sometimes, or there's not as much substance. So there could be many, many factors in the world. That's why he says that in the beginning of your path to Allah, when you're trying your hardest to get somewhere, especially at the beginning, he says he should not visit any of the salihin as long as he's still under instruction of his own shaykh before he reaches accomplishment, out of fear that he may see some karama in this person or some other characteristic in any of them which he does not see in his own shaykh, and then he would think that his shaykh is deficient, and thus he would then be deprived of being able to benefit from him. Generally what they say is that this doesn't mean that you avoid. I mean, there's some Sufi tariqs are very, very strict on this, and they don't, the instruction in there is that they should not go to anybody else if it's a Sufi talk. If it's got anything to do with tasawwuf, then you don't go there, you just stick with your shaykh. And others, they're not that strict about it, but they'll just re-emphasize that you don't get deluded and don't just start getting mesmerized by every new thing that you see. Even if the person is a wonderful person, that doesn't make the difference. It's just that you've got one, let's just say if somebody visits from another country, a big sheikh visits from another country, and you've got a local person already. Now the fact is that this big sheikh is internationally known, he may be, so you become attached to them and you think he's bigger than my sheikh, so I should become, but then what's going to be your access to this individual? Right? You're not going to have access to this individual. He's an international person, he's probably got so many different murids and students, so for you to access that person is going to be difficult. You won't be able to, you may be able to see them once in a while when you're traveling or they travel. So the main thing is that keep your focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for accomplishment, because it all comes from Allah at the end of the day, and a shaykh is just a valuable means. So وَمِنْهَا, next one, number 6 is وَمِنْهَا سُوءُ الظَّنِّ بِنَفْسِهِ وَحُسْنُهُ بِغَيْرِهِ. This is probably the antidote for so many problems in the world today, based on arrogance and conceit and narcissism and things like that, which is basically always to doubt yourself, to have a bad opinion about yourself. Bad opinion means be suspicious of yourself in terms of your intentions. Because it's only by really looking at things with a critical eye that you can improve them. You're obviously going to be constructively critical about yourself, not negatively critical. If somebody's negatively critical about themselves, then they're probably going to lead to despondency. That's not a good thing. So be very critical of oneself, but in a constructive way, and always have husnul dhan with others. Always have a good opinion about others. A lot of people do the opposite. A lot of people do absolutely the opposite. They can do no wrong themselves, but everybody else, they will find the smallest issue with them. Especially when you travel, you'll find those that do that more than others. Not that we're trying to look for those kind of people, but that's when it comes about. Because especially when you're traveling, there's going to be lots of uncomfortable situations, because you're in new territory. Everything doesn't always go to plan, and that's when a person's character comes out. Are they going to be critical? Are they going to just take it in their stride? Are they going to look at things positively? Are they going to give people the benefit of the doubt? That's very important. It's really bad to be with somebody who just keeps complaining. Anyway, حتى يرى أن كل أحد أحسن منه حالا. Eventually you should be that you just see everybody to be better than you. Not in a gullible sense. Like you genuinely believe that people could be much better than you. You see a person who's not as educated as you, doesn't know as much as you, but he's praying in the first line in the masjid and you're praying in the third line. Well, I would think that person is better than me, even though he probably knows less than I do, because I don't have that tawfiq that he does. So there's always going to be something that you can find in somebody. Somebody may be more generous than I am. There could be so many different things. The whole point is, don't be gullible, but always look at the positives. And to be honest, some people think that when you do that, then you're just setting yourself up to be deceived by somebody. But we're not saying to be gullible. We're just saying to have a good life and to not take tension on yourself. Not to just get too preoccupied with others, because every negativity is bad for you. Even non-Muslims will tell you that. People who deal with therapies and so on, they tell you that the more negative you are, the worse you will be. in terms of your health. So it's not a good thing anyway. Then he says, number 7 is أن لا ينتصر لنفسه في أمر. Don't be defensive. Don't always be defend. Don't keep defending yourself about everything. Just let things go. Number 8, he says أن يرى عبادته دائما قد دخلها الخلل من الرياء والخواتر الردية. Always be suspicious of your worship. Always scrutinize your worship. Always. That some aspect or some kind of weakness has crept into your worship. Your devotion has been overcome by some kind of defect, like ostentation. You're doing it to show off. You're doing it to attract attention. You're doing it so that you can let people know something about you, something positive about yourself. Or that when you're doing your worship, there's going to be evil thoughts coming in your mind. So always, that's the way to purify the worship. Because if we're too tolerant of mistakes or inconsistencies, for example, if Samsung were too tolerant of inconsistencies, they would never have been able to become such a proficient company in providing mobile phones. But because they can really be particular that no, it needs to be perfect in every sense, and they can self-scrutinize. That's how you get better in everything. So we need to do that for ourselves as well, especially our worship. ومثلها يستحق عليه العقاب لولا مسامحة الله تعالى له فيستغفر من عبادته ومن استغفاره. So when we're doing worship, we're going to feel like, Alhamdulillah, Allah has given me the tawfiq to do this worship. I've accomplished something. But is the worship up to scratch? So that's why he's saying that if we do have some weaknesses in our worship, the intention is not perfect, the sincerity is not fully there, there's something else that is causing, turning our attention and attracting our attention, then he's saying that, to be honest, if Allah wants, that could be worthy of punishment if it wasn't for Allah's pardoning. Because when we present worship to Allah, it should be perfect. Sometimes when you prepare a gift for somebody who is very sensitive about these things, very a lot of self-dignity and so on, self-respect, and they don't like it, they're not going to accept it, they're not going to feel good about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most perfect being there is. Why should He accept an incomplete worship from us? So we need to be thinking that I'm giving Him something incomplete, which I could be punished for, to be honest. Instead of Allah saying thank you for the worship, I should be punished for it, that you're giving Him something incomplete, the Lord of the worlds, the possessor of all perfection. We're giving something imperfect. That's why He says you should make istighfar for His worship. That, oh Allah, I seek your forgiveness for this type of worship. And then he should make istighfar for his istighfar, that even my istighfar isn't correct, because istighfar is also a worship. That, oh Allah, I seek your forgiveness even from my istighfar, that I'm not even sincere fully in my istighfar. These are not difficult things. They may sound difficult in theory, but they become an attitude and it becomes easy. Number 9, he says, is أن لا يتكلم بكلام العارفين من الفرق والجمع والبقاء والفناء ما لم يكمل. I guess this is not going to happen inshallah with us, because we don't really discuss those kind of things, but generally when people get into some really heavy Sufi tariqas, there's a lot of terminology that goes with that, like farq and jam' and baqa and fana and so on. So like with everything else, right, you want to use the lingo, you want to fit in, so you start using the terminology, just like with everything else, right? If you get into academia, you're going to have to start speaking and writing like that, right? You're going to have to then treat the subjects. Then you would have read history at Oxford as opposed to have studied it, right? They say he read philosophy at Oxford, right? Sounds a bit weird for normal people, like what do you mean by that? But that's the way to say it, to make sure that you sound like you're from there, right? Anybody read history at Oxford? No. So you start feeling like, so he says, avoid that until you get somewhere, until you're accomplished, then you'll be able to use those terminologies properly. Otherwise, you're just going to use them to show something. It's going to lead to ostentation. على أن الأولى للكامل ترك ذلك. In fact, he says even for the accomplished individual, he shouldn't even use these terms. إلا لحاجة تقتضي ذلك. Unless there's an absolute need that demands that you use this term, because there's no other term to use. He's got a very good point, because when you start using this terminology that nobody else understands, then basically you start feeling exclusive, right? Everybody has terminology. There's nothing wrong with terminology, really. It really depends on why you're doing it. Like if you get into Tablighi Jamaat, then you're going to use stuff in like, uske ahwal hai, right? There's lots of words, hame jor karna hai, and gasht, and there's words like that. There's nothing really wrong about that, but he's just saying be careful, especially in tasawwuf, because ostentation comes about because of that. Right, number 10 he says is muhasabatun nafs, constant introspection of the self. Ala martakabathu min al-muharramat wal-makruhat wa fudul al-mubahat. So of course, anything that it has perpetrated, the nafs has perpetrated, of the absolute unlawful matters, or undesirable, reprehensible matters, or just excessive permissible matters. So not every permissible thing needs to be done. So anything that's gone beyond what's actually useful, beneficial and needed, even of permissible matters, that should be avoided. وعلى ما وقع في نفسه من الخواطر النفسانية والشيطانية والاستغفار منها. Also to introspect the self about the various different whisperings and notions and ideas, the shaytaniyah ideas that come into the mind, and then to seek forgiveness from that. So essentially we want to purify ourselves, not just outwardly but also inwardly, in terms of our thoughts in everything, just in general. Not just related to our worship, as he said earlier, and about our interaction and thoughts about others, but just generally, I don't want bad thoughts to come into my mind. Just in general. I want my mind to be a container of good. Only good things pass through my mind. The less exposure we have to wrong things, then that's the way it's going to happen. Inshallah. Inshallah. Right, what is the difference between, he's then now explaining, because he mentioned khatir an-nafsani wa shaytani, a thought of the soul, or a whispering of the soul, or a whispering of the shaitan. What's the difference between a whispering of the soul, a nafs whisper, or a shaitani whisper? What's the difference? Well, clearly one is internal and one is external, but beyond that, how do you tell the difference? He's saying the difference between those two. This is a very important clarification he makes, especially since we're coming into Ramadan. This really relates to Ramadan as well. أن الأول, the first one, which is خاطر النفساني, the one from the soul, is يكون بإلحاه على المعصية أو الشهوة. If the whispering is from the soul, it's going to be very persistent, very, very persistent, to make us do a sin or fulfill a desire. It's very persistent. It's almost like pathetically persistent. كالطفل الذي يلح على أمه حتى تؤتيه ما يريد. Just like a stubborn child that keeps crying, wailing, stubbornly persisting on its mother until she gives in and gives him what he wants. That kind of a child. That's what the nafs is like. So if we feel like something is telling us to sin or do something wrong, fulfill an act of desire, and we just can't avoid it, it's plaguing our mind. It's there in prayer, even when we're in sajda, it's telling us, it's reminding us of the pleasures of these things. Then that is most likely going to be the nafs. That's going to be a whisper of the soul, and that's more dangerous actually. فَيَجِبُ قَمْعُهَا عَنْ ذَلِكَ. It is wajib, it's necessary to eradicate that. How? بِمُلَازَمَةِ الذِّكْرِ. The way you'll do that is to just constantly do dhikr, وَبَيَانِ عَاقِبَةِ هَذَا الْأَمْرِ, and to have clarification by reading and listening about the consequence of such a deed. وَالتَّوَجُّهِ إِلَى الشَّيْخِ, and to basically have a focus on your shaykh, so that somebody can supervise in this regard. That's basically the nafsani whisper. And to be honest, Ramadan is to help us deal with that one more than the other one, because shaitan is locked up anyway. That's why in Ramadan, generally, the sins that we continue to commit are those that are from the soul, they're addictions. It's just like, think about it like this. Those who've smoked, the first time you smoked, why did you smoke? Most likely because somebody encouraged you to do so, right? Most people have smoked first time round because somebody encouraged them to do so. A friend, some peers, don't be chicken, do it, just have one, and so on. But when you become habituated, do you need anybody to encourage you? Or is it just the nafs that encourages you? Consider that to be a nafsani whisper. To continue smoking is a nafsani whisper. And the first few times that somebody told us smoke, that was a shaitani whisper. It's the same thing like that. So likewise in Ramadan, you won't get any new shaitani whispers because shaitan is out of the picture in general. You'll just get nafsani, it's the addictions which will want to kick in. But by the end of 30 days, the whole idea of the 30 days is that that's detoxified. That we remove we remove that. That nafsani whisper is also taken into consideration. So shaitan's already bound up. The nafs has to be trained in the absence of shaitan. So now he moves on to the second. He says that the shaitani whisper yakunu min ghayri ilhah. The shaitani whisper will not be persistent. It'll be an idea, right? And if you try to dismiss it by a'udhu billah or subhanallah or dhikr or remembrance or salat, that will go. It's quite easy. Generally be a new idea as well. It won't be an addiction, because that addiction idea is already from the nafs. Shaitan can also try to rekindle that as well. بَلْ يَأْمُرُ بِالْمَعْصِيَةِ وَيُزَيِّنُهَا. What shaitani whisper does is that it actually commands you to do a disobedience, and it adorns it for you. Makes it look really beautiful and nice. فَإِنْ طَاوَعَهُ الشَّخْص, if the person obeys the shaitan and does that thing, yeah, go out with your friends and they're going to go out to such a place, go, no, I can't go. No, I can't go, that's very wrong, I'm going to avoid it, I'm not going to go this time. Right? I'm not going to go. So, if you don't listen, if you've avoided it, it says, انتقل لآخر, then it'll give you another idea. It just wants to trap us somehow or the other. It just keeps on giving us new ideas, unless we continue dhikr. That's why he's saying, لأن قصده الغواية على أي حالة تكون. He just wants to mislead and cause deviance in whatever way it is. He doesn't care what sin you do. If he can't make us do a hard sin, a complicated sin, a severe sin, he's going to make us do something lighter. So if he can't make us go out and we're going to pray instead, and he can't make us avoid i'tikaf, avoid going for hajj, then he's going to say, show off in your i'tikaf, or do something else wrong in your i'tikaf, or in your hajj for that matter. So he's going to just try to get us in somewhere that he's just there to try to bowl us over. Well, la ma'siyatan bi khususi, it doesn't care about any particular sin. The nafs is going to be like, no, I want that sweet. وأما الفرق بين الخاطر الرباني والخاطر الملكي. So now also we've got the shaitani whisper and the nafsani whisper, but you've also got the lordly whisper of the Lord, of Allah, and you've also got a whisper from the angel. What is that to do? So that's al-khatir al-rabbani and al-khatir al-malaki, that's the angelic whisper. So he's saying أن الأول, the first one, is ما فيه تنبيه على الخير من غير حث ولا يؤدي إلى حيرة. The one which is from Allah is going to be generally a notion, an idea, an encouragement in general. It's going to be just the notion of doing good without too much encouragement. An idea pops into your mind, I should donate. I should attend the majlis. I should go for Hajj. I should go for Umrah. I should do this extra this Ramadan. I want this Ramadan to be better than the previous Ramadan. These are ideas, but there's not going to be a massive encouragement. These are fleeting ideas that come through your mind. Number two, the one from the angel, is the good angel, obviously, is where there's encouragement towards something. When you feel a very strong impetus to do something good. You really feel like, I want to do this. No, I should donate here. I should go for Hajj this year. As long as the idea of going for Hajj is not to show off each other, then that can't be angelic. Then he talks about number 11. He says, Madhu a'da'ihi, praising one's enemies. Praising one's enemies. That'll make you feel a bit less depressed, wouldn't it? If you think you have so many enemies and you're scared of them. To praise your enemy, doesn't that empower you? Right. Again, it doesn't mean you have to be gullible. It doesn't mean you have to let them walk over you. But it's just saying that take the bite out. Take the animosity out. وَعَدَمُ التَّكَدُّرْ مِنْ ذِكْرِهِمْ, and don't feel repulsed by when having to mention them. Unless there's a tarbiyah there, unless you're doing it for a particular reason, it's different. وَالدُّعَاءِ لَهُمْ بِالْمَغْفِرَةِ وَالتَّوْفِيقِ, and making dua for them, for their forgiveness and for divine enablement for them to do good and not be bad. That's better than asking for destruction, because you don't know when they're going to be destroyed, if they're going to be destroyed. But they're going to bother you forever. They're going to bother you as long as they last. But if we make dua that they be rectified and reformed, then that's wonderful. That's one extra great person in the world. That's one evil gone. It's just the way we think sometimes, isn't it? وَمِنْهَا الدُّعَاءُ لِعُصَاةِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كَذَلِكَ, and likewise the dua for all disobedient believers, just in general, because the more obedient believers there are, the better it is for everybody in the whole world. So we're doing a favor not just to ourselves but for everybody by making dua for disobedient people, rather than keep cursing them and talking bad about them. It's all attitude. It's all about attitude. He's got one main point left afterwards, and then he has his final dua. So inshallah we'll do that the next time and finish this off, inshallah. So we ask Allah for tawfiq for this month of Ramadan and for the rest of our life as well. آخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.